This episode is brought to you by Hasa. Liquid is clearly better. Liquid chlorine is the highest purity, works immediately, has no added cyanuric acid or calcium, and it will leave your pool safe, clean, and clear. And by the Bottom Feeder professional grade battery powered vacuum system. It sucks to clean pools, so cleaning pools sucks less. Get $100 off with code DVB100.
This episode is brought to you by Skimmer, the #1 pool service software in North America. With Skimmer, you can streamline your schedule, grow your revenue, and keep your customers coming back with 5-star service. Whether you're a one-person operation or an established team, Skimmer is your partner in success. Visit getskimmer.com/poolguy to try Skimmer for free for 30 days.
The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show.
Hi, welcome to the Pool Guy Podcast Show. In this episode, I'm going to go over gas heaters versus heat pumps. Which one should you choose for your pool? I'll go over, of course, the pros and cons of each. And at the end, I'm going to actually share a hybrid heat pump gas heater combination that Pentair makes. If you can't decide between the gas heater and heat pump, you may want to go for the hybrid option that Pentair offers. Are you a pool service pro looking to take your business to the next level? Join the Pool Guy coaching program. Get expert advice, business tips, exclusive content, and get direct support from me. I'm a 35-year veteran in the industry. Whether you're starting out or scaling up, I've got the tools to help you succeed. Learn more at swimmingpoollearning.com. There was a lot of talk in California about banning gas appliances, a new build starting in 2030. I think there's some backtracking there. Builders are finding out that people like natural gas appliances, especially stoves and ovens, and I guess stovetop burners, I don't know the exact phrase for that, but the oven and stove combination. And they're finding that they're having a harder time selling homes to people in California with all electric appliances. It's just something that people like gas. I like gas myself. But they are moving towards zero emission type gas appliances. So that's going to make those a little more expensive. And gas heaters were also on the cutting block at some point with all the changes that the state was making about moving to electric, which means that you would have to go to a heat pump since that runs on electricity versus a gas heater, which runs on natural gas or propane. And so that's the first difference between a gas heater and a heat pump, or a pool heater and a heat pump, I should say, because you could use propane as well, is that the heat pump runs on electricity and the heater runs on natural gas or propane. In most areas, it runs on natural gas. I'm just going to say natural gas going forward here in this podcast. So I'll start off right away by saying that if you're changing or you want to go from a gas heater to a heat pump, know that there is something more intensively involved than just changing out the gas heater for the heat pump. There is some electrical work that needs to be done. You need to run a dedicated 230 volt line to the heat pump because it uses a lot of amperage, and usually you can't use the existing equipment pad electricity to power the heat pump. When it starts up, I think it pulls like 40 amps, and that's not going to be enough power to split between your pool pump, your timer, your salt system, and that's why a dedicated new line has to be installed, which could run you anywhere from $1,500 to $2,500 depending on how far away your equipment pad is to your electric panel to run the new 230 volt line, 220, 240 line to the pad to connect the heat pump to it. So that's a bit of a drawback if you are thinking about switching because you have to add that expense into that. The same goes if you have an equipment pad with a heat pump and you want to go to a gas heater. You would have no problem with the power to power the gas heater. You know, the 220, 230 line is perfectly fine. However, you're going to need to run a gas line from the heater all the way to your gas meter, which is just about as expensive or more expensive than running a electric line for the heat pump. So it's harder to go from one to the other. It's better to start with one or the other when you're building your pool. If you're remodeling your pool and you have a gas heater, I would suggest just sticking with the gas heater in most cases, unless you have solar and you think that you're going to save money with the solar and you want to go with the heat pump. You can, of course, make that change, and it's going to cost some money to run that line again for the heat pump. Here are some other factors that I think are important to note between a gas heater and a heat pump. The gas heater heats the water much faster than a heat pump. So, for example, there's many examples. I think if you go to Jandy's website, they have like some time snapshots of like a gas heater, a 10,000 gallon pool. I think it'd be about twice as fast. This is based on a 400,000 BTU gas heater. So if you get a smaller gas heater, there was a guy in my group one time where the customer didn't want to spend money on their heater and they wanted to get the cheapest heater possible. And he didn't really know anything about BTUs, and he got them a 125 BTU heater for a 20,000 gallon pool. And that would take about 4 times to heat the pool as a 400 BTU or 400,000 BTU heater. And the same goes with a heat pump and a gas heater. You're going to get the water temperature up much faster with a gas heater than with a heat pump. For example, for a spa, let's say you have a attached spa to your pool, the gas heater will go from 60 degrees to 100 degrees in probably about 20-25 minutes. The heat pump will probably take about an hour to an hour and a half to achieve that same temperature, that same rise in temperature as the gas heater takes. So the gas heater is much faster, and if speed is what you're going for and efficiency with speed, then of course the gas heater would be the winner in that category. Now, as far as the energy source, again, natural gas or propane, which may be prohibitive in your area as far as cost goes, or may be cheap in your area for natural gas. It all depends on what state you're in, what area and the state you're in. Here in Southern California, natural gas is really expensive, and I believe the heat pump running on electricity is probably a little bit cheaper in my area, at least. Not anything that's going to make homeowners go out there and switch out their heaters for heat pumps, but it is a little bit more expensive for natural gas at this point than electricity. And if you have solar again, then of course the heat pump would be something that would be beneficial because you wouldn't have to pay necessarily for the electricity for the heat pump in that case. So it is definitely, I think, a savings in some regards for a heat pump over a gas heater, but in some cases it's not. And so I would say the cost of natural gas versus electricity is pretty much a wash at that point, and I would say that it's pretty evenly split amongst both the gas heater and the heat pump. If you're going strictly for efficiency, of course the heat pump is much more efficient than the gas heater. The efficiency is probably 3 to 5 times more efficient than the gas heater, which just burns the fuel directly. It's just the natural gas going into the heater, and it's just like having your burners on your stove. Same kind of concept with the gas heater. So of course it's not going to be nearly as efficient energy-wise as a heat pump. So I say the heat pump wins in that particular category as far as energy efficiency. It's much more efficient than a gas heater. Lifespan, here's where I think the heat pump also wins. It's not quite as complicated as a gas heater. If you ever worked on a gas heater, there are a lot of components in there that make the actual natural gas heat up the pool, heat up the water. So you're going to have less of a lifespan with the gas heater than you are with a heat pump, because just technology-wise or technically wise, or just the inner guts of the system, it's more efficient and less parts and less things to worry about breaking down. And they run differently. The heat pump is a much more efficient way of getting the water hot versus a gas heater, which has a lot of different components that can go bad. So basically, I would say a gas heater will last you about 12 years, and a heat pump will last anywhere from 12 to 20 years. And of course, you can get a gas heater to last you 15 or 20 years as well with part changes, and if you don't use it too much, it'll last longer. But the heat pump definitely is probably a little better as far as, breaking down and needing a lot of major parts change, and the lifespan of a heat pump is longer than a gas heater. And the Pool Guy Podcast Show has teamed up with UPA to bring you affordable, reliable liability insurance starting at just $64 a month. Get up to $2 million in coverage, and the members of my coaching group get an even lower rate. Protect your business and your peace of mind. Sign up with UPA today by clicking the link in the podcast description. There is a component of weather when you're talking about a gas heater and a heat pump. So basically, the air temperature is a factor. The gas heater is not dependent on the air temperature. So if it's, 40 degrees out and you wanted to heat the spa from 50 degrees to 100 degrees, not a problem with the gas heater. It's going to fire up and have no problem. But for the heat pump, if you're in the 40s and you're trying to heat up the pool or spa, you're going to have less efficiency, basically because you're running on electricity and it pulls the air in from outside to heat it up. It works differently, a different principle of operation than a gas heater that makes its own heat with the gas burning. And so you're going to have a harder time in cold weather, 60-degree weather versus a gas heater and a heat pump. It's going to be less efficient to heat it up in that kind of weather. Now, if you're in the 70s and 80s and 90s and you want to heat your pool up, not a big deal. You're not going to have that problem with a heat pump. You will have that problem with a gas heater. I should say on the flip side, the heat pump can actually act as a chiller and cool the water down as well. It operates a lot like an HVAC system that's run on electricity. I have one of these that's installed at one of my properties. It's really cool because there's no gas line and it just runs off electricity. And so the operation can be reversed, just like an HVAC system running on electricity from heat to cool. You can actually cool the water off. So if you're in Palm Springs or a desert area and your water temperature gets to 95 degrees, this would be something to think about because then it'll actually work to lower the water temperature. However, if you do get into those 30s, 40s, and 50s at night in those cold regions, you want to use your spa, the heat pump may not work as effectively as a gas heater. Let me talk a little bit about the footprint of a heat pump versus a gas heater. A lot of the gas heaters now are 2 by 2 feet, really small and compact, which is nice for equipment pad areas, and it's something to consider. The heat pump, they do make smaller ones, and they are getting a little bit smaller, more compact, but I don't think they're going to be anywhere near 2 feet by 2 feet like the gas heaters. The heat pump unit does need space for the air intake and the exhaust and the fan, so it's going to be bigger than a gas heater just by the fact that the components are different than a gas heater. And so if you have a small area to put this in, the heat pump is not ideal because it's not going to fit in there. Here in California, a lot of times the builder will actually stack the gas heater on a metal frame above the pumps because the equipment pad areas are so small. So you can get a 2 by 2 heater, no problem, to stack on top the filter and pump here, but the heat pump would have some trouble in those tight equipment pads. So just remember that the gas heater is going to be a lot smaller as far as footprints, and it's going to be something to consider depending on your space and your equipment pad. Gas heaters are a little bit louder. I mean, it's one of those things where, even with a heat pump running, you're going to hear it. So it's not something that I think is a factor with the noise of the heater, but you can hear the gas heater, I think, a little more than the heat pump. To me, not a big deal. Also, the gas heater has a faster recovery. So if you heat the pool and then you want to heat the spa and then your party goes on longer, you want to heat it again, it will recover and heat up quicker and faster than a heat pump will. Because remember, heat pumps take a lot longer to heat the water to begin with, and they have a longer recovery time than the gas heater. And then the weather dependency as well. If it's like 50 degrees out and you're trying to heat your spa with the heat pump, you have to add even more time to it because of the cold weather out there versus the gas heater. It doesn't matter what the temperature is, you're going to be able to get that spa heated up very rapidly. Because the gas heater doesn't rely on outside air, it relies on the gas burners internally to heat up the pool water. And that's a main difference and a key factor, I think, in regions where it gets really cold out, you want to use your spa or pool or heat it up. I would think twice about a heat pump and lean more towards a gas heater in those regions. And I did mention that gas heaters and heat pumps are more regional. you're going to find a lot of gas heaters in those areas where it gets cold, like the Southeast and Gulf Coast, Florida, where you want instant heat for those cold. I mean, it's pretty mild over there in Florida, I should say, but you do want that instant heat. And of course, the Northeast and Midwest is going to have gas heaters, and they're going to see more heat pumps in the Southwest, Arizona, Nevada, and you're going to see some more in Oregon and California. Although in my area of California, the heat pumps haven't really caught on, mainly a gas heater territory. And then, of course, the cold regions and the mountains, you're going to have gas heaters versus heat pumps because they're much more effective above 50 degrees. And it's something where if you're in an area, again, where it gets cold, you may want to gravitate towards a gas heater over a heat pump. Fortunately, the manufacturers are getting smart and they're realizing that homeowners can't decide between a heat pump and a gas heater. And since it's one of those things where I just went over a lot of different pros and cons, and you may say, well, I like the gas heater, but I also like this aspect of the heat pump. Well, there's actually some new hybrid units coming out, or out there already, I should say. Pentair has one called the Ultra Temp ETI High Performance Hybrid Heater, which is a combination of a gas heater and a heat pump. It's pretty smart, and it's something that I think is, going to be moving towards the future where they're going to have these combo units because both have pros and cons, and both can be used in any region at this point if you combine them both together. So there are 4 different modes you can use with this particular hybrid heater. You have your heat pump mode, you have the gas heater mode, and you have the hybrid mode, and you have a dual mode. And so this is something that it actually has built-in intelligence to pick that as well. And it's one of those things where the wave of the future may be these hybrid units because each unit has their pros and cons, their pluses and minuses. And if you can combine them like Pentair did with this heater, you can get the best of both worlds out of one device. And so I think it's something to consider. If you're torn between the heater, gas heater, and heat pump, why not just buy one of these hybrid heater units, and you'd have both the ability to use your heat pump to continuously run it during the summer to heat the pool if you have solar panels, or if you want to quickly fire up your spa and get in there, just put it on the gas mode and that will heat the spa rapidly. So again, if you can't decide, you may want to look into one of these hybrid units that are made by these major manufacturers. And again, the Pentair one is the Ultra Temp ETI High Performance Hybrid Heater. And it's something that, again, I would say is very versatile and efficient and effective, and something that they probably should have thought of a few years ago. But I think the technology now is here so they can actually combine both of these together to have dual heat exchangers in these heaters, so you can go from one mode to the other or one type to the other. And it's just something to put on your radar if you're in the market for a new heating source for your pool or spa. If you're looking for other podcasts, you can find those by going to my website, swimmingprolearning.com, clicking on the podcast icon on the banner, and it'll take you to a drop-down menu with over 1,800 podcasts there. And if you're interested in the coaching program I offer, you can learn more at poolguycoaching.com. Thanks for listening to this podcast. Have a great rest of your week, and God bless. This episode is brought to you by HASA, providing products that deliver clean, healthy water for every aspect of everyday life. The bottom feeder battery-powered vacuum system, portable, powerful, and only weighs 12 pounds. And Skimmer. Get Skimmer, America's #1 pool service software. Podcast listeners can try Skimmer for free at getskimmer.com/poolguy.